Bitrise User Group. Hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you're joining us from. Yeah, morning to you. I'm your host, Akash Hantush. We'll start in a couple of minutes, but hey everyone, we'll start in a couple of minutes, but before we do, I actually have a couple of things that we should mention. We can wait for all of the new joiners in the meantime. First of all, the podcast is being recorded and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel at a later time. It's probably a few days. For anyone joining us already from over there, already watching the video, thank you for watching and hope you'll have a great time, and don't forget to subscribe. Our next bug is going to be on the 4th of June at the same time. We'll have a registration link at the end of this one so that you can already let us know that you want to join. This time, we'll have a couple of presentations about testing and then a roundtable discussion where we'll actually be counting on you to join us and talk a little bit about our first deep dive webinars topic, which was fanning out tests. And all of this that you see and hear here today is community content. So these talks are not owned or produced by us. They all belong solely to the presenters. You can ask questions using Click Meeting's built-in Q&A tool. Basically, what that means is on top of your chat box, you can see a little question mark. If you click that and type in your question, it will mark it as an actual question. After every presentation, we'll have a dedicated 5 minutes during which the presenters will actually answer your questions. So I think without further ado, we can get started with the first presentation, the title of which is Run Your Android Tests with Bitrise on Genymotion Cloud Virtual Devices. Our presenters are going to be Thomas Carpentier and Ellinor Kwok from Genymotion. A little bit about them. They're both joining us from France. Ellinor is joining us from Paris. She's been working for many years on Android-related projects, first as an app developer and then now pre-sales. She helps users speed up their tests using Genymotion Cloud and also works with partners to integrate Genymotion Cloud with solutions, including CI, to just provide a whole end-to-end solution for mobile automation testing. Thomas is a QA engineer at GenMobile. He is joining us from Rio. He is in charge of product validation, manual, and automated. He uses Selenium, Appium for browser testing and mobile testing, and he's also in charge of developing integration of Genymotion. So yeah, their talk is going to give you a little bit of introduction on how to run your end-to-end Android mobile tests with Bitrise using Genymotion Cloud steps. And without further ado, I will give the stage over to them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Akos, for the introduction. So I'm just going to share my screen. So hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here at our first bug meeting. I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see our presentation. So I think that everyone can see my screen. So yeah, I'm going to start, and then Thomas will follow. So yeah, we found it interesting to integrate with Bitrise to help users have a full CI experience. So as you can see on this slide, you may be already aware. Yeah, I think most of you must be aware of this continuous integration workflow. We have here Bitrise as the build and orchestrator of the test, and Genymotion Cloud devices where Bitrise will run the tests. So before talking more about the integration with Bitrise, let me introduce you a bit on what is Genymotion Cloud for those who have never heard of it. So Genymotion Cloud is basically Android virtual devices in the cloud. As it's in the cloud, you can easily scale the number of Android virtual devices to run your tests on. As it's on the cloud, there is no infrastructure constraints, so you don't need to handle and manage the devices by yourself. And we wanted also with the integration with Bitrise to extend the compatibility of testing frameworks. So with Genymotion Cloud, we are compatible with any testing framework that relies on ADB, such as Espresso or Appium. And on Genymotion Cloud, you can also fully interact with devices from a web browser. So for example, for manual testing, or also for automation testing, you can also see what's going on the devices while you run your automation tests. So Genymotion Cloud is available as a SaaS or PaaS solution. So the PaaS solution is available on different cloud providers, such as AWS, GCP, Alibaba Cloud, and Azure. And our SaaS solution is hosted by us. And the so for your information, the integration that we have with Bitrise is for the SaaS version, which is a more integrated one. But of course, if you have any needs on having compatibility with integration of Bitrise with the other cloud providers, you can also let us know. So we know that testing mobile apps can be really time-consuming, and also with a highly Android-dominant fragmented mobile market, it can also be really difficult to run the test on a lot of devices. So with Bitrise, we know that it is really easy to have faster CIO builds because Bitrise provides an intuitive UI for workflow creation. And I think that, yeah, the tool is really cool. And to start test like efficiently and really quickly, it is easy to start several virtual devices to test at scale, for example, to do parallel testing or test sharding. So now, so it's finished for the introduction. So I'm going to give the mic to Thomas so that he can give a sneak peek on the integration.
Thanks, Ellinor. Hi, everyone. So now I just will present you the two-step we are developed. So two-step, one to start Android devices and one to stop Android devices. So here the screen in the screenshot, you can see the start step. It needs some parameters, your Genymotion credential. Here we will use a secret variable to store them. You also need a recipe UID. It represents an Android devices, for example, Google Pixel, Samsung S10, etc., etc. We have a lot of configuration available on Genymotion Cloud SaaS. So you can type one or several recipe UID in your workflow. So if you type several devices in the parameter, all the devices will be started in parallel in order to boost your build speed time. We provide an exhaustive list of recipe UID and Android devices on our website. In the steps, we also need ADB serial port provider. When we will start the devices, it will be automatically connected through ADB. But if you want to specify a port, you can fill its value here. For example, if you want to run parallel tests with Appium, you need to specify ADB serial port. And finally, we have the stop step. The stop step needs no parameter, and it will stop all devices we have started at the start step. The stop step will be run automatically at the end of the workflow, even if the previous step fails. So now it's time for a little demo. So here I will trigger a build with a Bitrise web app. So I have an Android application. Here you can see I have 4 browsers started. It's a Genymotion Cloud SaaS application. The start step will start 4 devices in parallel, because I want to start my application on 4 devices. So it makes just a few seconds. Okay, so now I will open all the devices in order to see what's happened during the test execution. The device boots in 20 seconds. Now I have my Android devices up, so we can continue to the Android test. So here I use PyTest and Appium. So the application will be start on devices. All the tests are okay because we have seen hello Bitrise User Group, and all devices are stopped. So that's all for the demo. The mic is yours, Ellinor.
Yeah, just going to mention. So thank you, Thomas, for the demo. And yeah, that's it. So this is like it was a sneak peek on the integration that we have with Bitrise. There is another webinar that is planned to have like a more deep dive on these specific tests. So if you have any inquiries on what you would like to see, if you want to have maybe a more demo for other type of testing frameworks, so let us know. So now we are open for the questions.
Thank you so much to both of you. Yeah, let's see if anyone has any questions. For anyone wondering, the Q&A tool got disabled in the meantime, so just post your questions in chat and we'll read them out. It's totally fine. And yeah, again, thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Ellinor. That was amazing. There you go. Our first question comes from
from Marion.
yeah.
Yes, of course, it's possible to connect Genymotion with CI tools like Jenkins.
All right. We will have a recorded version of the whole bug, so don't worry. Damien is asking whether your Appium tests run using Maven.
No, it not. For my example, it doesn't use Maven, but Ellinor has a GitHub repository. Maybe it's public or not, I don't remember. But we have some example with Maven.
And it works perfectly because you can use, I think it's the CLA step that you use to run Maven, right, Thomas? For Bitrise.
All right, great. We might have some more questions. Let's wait and see. But thank you already for everyone for our questions. We'll just wait for Michael in just a second. Oh.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so you definitely can do ADB screen record.
All right. Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, then thank you again, and we'll move on to our next presenter. I'll wait just a second because I still see people typing. All right. Let's just move on. Thank you both of you again.
Thank you.
And we'll
Thank you, everyone.
Just a second. Our next presenter is Javier Marsicano. And Javier, you should be able to use everything right now. I'll put you into the presenter mode. He is joining us from Buenos Aires. His presentation is titled Continuous Integration with Android UI Tests. A little bit about Javier. He's a mobile software and open source tech are his passion, especially anything Android related. And 2012, he started working on CS Research Institutes, which involved several technologies. He has taught algorithms and programming one-on-one among other subjects as chair assistant professor at a university. And he's been developing mobile apps since 2014, but he has also a strong background in software architecture and NLP as well. So thank you for joining us, Javier.
And hi everyone. Thank you, Agus, for the introduction. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So let me activate the screen sharing. Here we go. Share start screen. Okay, you should see my screen. I should be sharing my screen now. So let's start. Okay. So my talk is very related to the topic Thomas and Ellie has already talked. Well, let's start. I want to mention some project I've been working on, mobile projects to develop mobile apps. These are most of the mobile apps I've been working on, and most of them we used UI test, in particular Overwatch League, eDreams, and GoBoJags. So we used Espresso test and Appium in Overwatch League. So let's start with the well-known test pyramid that illustrates these concepts. I'm gonna talk about this in detail later on, but as we can see here at the top, we have UI test. So this means that to have a holistic test verification, so to verify and monitor the integrity of our code base when integrating changes, we should have unit test, integration test, and UI test. So in case of Android mobile apps, we have tools like Espresso for native development and Appium. But I'm gonna focus on Espresso now. So I would like to show you Espresso in detail with a sample, a demo. So let me look for the sample project. Okay, I think this one. All right, let's see the Espresso tests I'm gonna use for this demo and how we normally execute them from our machines. So this is just a simple GitHub browser app for a demo. So here we have some test cases defined with Espresso. So the idea here lists all the tasks we have to execute with the build system, with Gradle. So these are connected Android test, connected check, are normally used to execute Espresso test. So in my case, I'm gonna use connected debug Android test. So this is the command to execute the test I want to show. So here we go. Because I want to execute only for debug build variant, we have release, debug, build variants, but in my case, I just want to execute debug only. So I have introduced a failure intentionally in one of these tests in order to see the report. So let's see how these tests execute in the emulator. Here is the command line tool, the command line interpreter with all the logs that the tests are printing. So here it starts executing all the test cases, and let's wait for the completion. This should not take more than 5 minutes. These are just few test cases. It searched for repositories, the authors. This is a test case. I think it's gonna fail. Yeah. Here we can see the failure is reported here in the command line, the terminal. But we are going to see more details in the report generated by the build system once all the tests are executed. So I think this is the last one. Okay, here we go. All the tests have executed, all test cases, and here in the terminal, we can see the link to the test report. So let's find it with the browser. Okay, so here we can see the test report with the failures and successful test executed. Here is the test case that failed, and this is the log that is showing the error or the stack trace execution. So this is very useful for debugging and diagnosing what's going wrong with the test or the app. Something very important I have to mention is that for this project, we are using a custom implementation for the test instrumentation runner. This is a custom implementation because we have to use a different application. So this is very important for Espresso in some cases, and this is set in the build system script and Gradle scripting files. Here is the parameter where we declare what test instrumentation runner we are using for execution. In this case is GitHub test runner. This is important because in Bitrise step we have to set up this manually. So far, so good. Well, the idea is not to execute this manually always. So the idea is to automate this. Here it comes, continuous integration system, Bitrise. The idea is to execute this automatically in some events. I'm going to show you later on. But well, Ellie and Thomas have already talked about it earlier, so let's move on. Well, Bitrise is built for mobile, and it comes with plenty of predefining the steps that help us to configure our pipelines. Bitrise has workflows. The pipelines are defined with workflows. You can have as many workflows as you need. This is an example of workflow. They report failures or successful. This is a typical workflow with some steps for Android. These are most of the steps that are used for mobile projects, but these are most of the steps that are used for UI tests. We have already seen Genymotion step, but we have native steps. This one is for generating, compiling the APK for the instrumented test. Of course, we can use Gradle. We can launch our Android virtual device. That's the old school way to execute tests, but now Bitrise provides a step here, this one, that allows us to use Firebase Test Lab under the hood. So I'm going to show you later on. The idea is these workflows to be triggered with some events like pushing in specific branches or creating pull requests or pushing a specific pattern, tag patterns. Okay, so let's see Bitrise in a while. This is the panel where you can configure your workflows. You can choose your workflows here. This is the workflow I had defined for executing UI test. So I placed the Android build for UI test here. This is important to place this before the virtual device testing step, because this is going to compile and generate the APK for instrumentation, and it will place the APK in this path that is going to be used for the next step. So here is the virtual device test step configuration. We can choose as many as devices we need. Here I use this one only with this configuration, portrait. 24 is the API level. Okay. Well, we can choose a different type of test according to Firebase Test Lab, but I'm going to choose instrumentation only. And these are important parameters. This is the environment variable that where you place the previous step place the APK to be used. And here you can configure when you have a custom implementation of the instrumentation runner that I shown you before. It has to be configured here. Here you can choose specific classes to execute in case you don't want to execute the whole test suite. This is very useful to save time, execution time. And here you can enable or disable the orchestrator. So that's everything you need to set up a basic execution for Espresso test. So here I have an execution completed in order to save time because I had to leave room for the next stock. So here we have the log that the logs that Bitrise shows us. And here we can see that the virtual device testing for Android has failed. So, of course, when this usually happens with unit tests, we want to see the logs or some reports. So where have the reports gone? I want to see why this test failed. I would like to debug and diagnose what because this step uses Firebase Test Lab, and we have this add-on test reports add-on. We can find the reports here. This is an amazing tool. This here we got nice reports with details. So let's see this execution. We can see which tests go successful and which test went wrong. Here we have the stack trace, the logs to diagnose. Something very amazing is that we have the video recording of the execution in the virtual device. So we can watch that. We can also have screenshots. It's very important. So the performance, this is a very, very useful tool for test reports. So let's move on. Lessons learned. I highly recommend to follow F.I.R.S.T Principles, that stand for fast, isolated, independent, repeatable, and self-validating. So going thorough, timely. Going back to the pyramid. So this means that UI test takes a long time to execute. So that's why we have to have few test cases, UI test cases, and I recommend to execute them in a specific moments when the team is not working or is not so active in nightly bids or execution, or maybe when merging in the main baseline. But avoid to execute it every time someone creates a pull request, because a UI test used to take a long time. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach me to discuss further, but you can ask questions right now.
Thank you so much, Javier. That was awesome. Yeah, we have a couple of questions, so let's take a look. First one comes from Roger, who's asking, can you link the slides and the repo after? I'm sure you can. Javier, are you still here with me? I think, oh, you're here. All right. So yeah, that was the first question. Are you here? Javier, there's something going on with your mic. I don't know whether you can hear us.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So the question was?
Will the link to the slides and the repo be made available later after debug?
Yes, sure. I'm going to share that later on.
All right. Our next question is, what methods must I implement to have a custom test runner in Android?
Well, that depends on the project characteristics. The common way, of course, you have to implement inherit from the Android JUnit runner. That's the standard one that's used, but you can implement it your custom inheriting, extending that class and overriding the methods. In my case, I override the method that chooses what application class to use for starting starting the app execution. But yeah, that depends on the project, the needs you have. But yeah, there are some documentations around there, but it's not complicated.
The next question actually comes from Marlon as well. What's the difference between running a test suite and a test case in a CI environment? So config tips.
Many people use different way those concepts. When I talk about test suite, I mean with different scenarios, different classes, test classes that are being executed. And in test case, I mean with some particular execution, let's say a method that is executing a test class. But in a CI environment, you can choose the class to be executed, and also the package also. So with the package, you can execute a test suite with several classes. So yeah, those are the different ways to choose. I guess there's one more question about orchestrator. No.
No. I think
okay.
I think that's
the last one.
Yeah.
Very good question. Okay.
All right. If we don't have any more questions, then thank you again, Javier. And we will be moving on to our next presenter, who is Karol Wrótniak, who I'm sure many of you know. And his presentation is titled How to Use Bitrise for Setting Up Physical Test Devices. And for those of you who don't know Karol, he's joining us from Wrocław in Poland. He's an Android developer and a Flutter developer with over 8 years of experience. Programming is his passion and work, and every day he builds apps and libraries at Droids on Roids, a mobile and web app development company from Poland. Hi, Karol. We'll give the stage over to you.
Hi, everyone. Today, I will talk to you about one of the issues which is solved by Bitrise. And this issue is related to testing, as the other presentations, but it is not directly related to continuous integration, which may be a little bit unusual because Bitrise is a continuous integration platform. Okay, I don't have any slides. I will just share the screen. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what is the issue? In the office at Droids and Roids, we are a software house, and in the office we have device shelves like this. Actually, this is not the current photo because now office is closed and you can just go and take picture. But during the setup, it looks like that. Now people can also access these devices, but remotely, connecting via VPN and then using Open Smartphone Test Farm, which looks like this. They can control device via web browser and, for example, perform some manual testing. Okay, and what is the actual issue? Well, often devices returned to the shelf was not in the same state as when they are taken. There were many apps installed, many photos taken, and the next person which uses the particular device needs to waste the time and clean the device. And here's a bit where Bitrise come into the scenes. So we already have OpenSTF set up. We have it connected to the Bitrise to perform, for example, instrumentation UI testing during the daily CI. So the easiest solution for us was to create a special Bitrise app, which looks like this. Actually, this is not a real app. I just clone it offline just for the demo purposes. So here is the workflow. We connect to the OpenVPN, then connect to OpenSTF. This step is community created. I am the author, by the way. And we perform device cleaning. And the important thing here is to use one of the beta features. If you schedule the build, you can turn this switch on and schedule the build, for example, from 2 a.m. in the morning. Schedule the build, and workflow we run every day at 2 a.m. Beware about this hour because it will change when your time zone changes, and things may go a little bit weird during daylight saving time switches. Okay, but what is this step? Well, that's a simple app. It is open source, hosted on Droids on Roids GitHub. And since I am an Android developer, so the easiest for me was to write it just similarly to the application. And here it is. It's just a plain Kotlin project, JVM, not Android one. And here, basically it uses Android Debug Bridge API, the same as Android Gradle plugin. And during cleaning, it executes ADB shell commands. First, we list the third-party packages. Third-party means not the system apps. We have also some excluded packages which are third-party but excluded from uninstalling. Apps like Visor or App Center, formerly Hockey App, so we don't want them to be removed. And we also clean all the external storage and temp storage. Yeah, and there is also a feature to restrict this to not all, restrict to only some devices by ADB serial numbers. And one might ask why we use Bitrise and not simple, for example, cron, which is run on server locally. Well, as I said before, we already have Bitrise set up for other projects, and it was faster for us to just add another Bitrise app than setting up something on the physical machines in the office. And also one more thing. If you want to perform this workflow like that in the Android stack, you may encounter some transfer issues. I reported it to Bitrise already. I hope they will fix it soon. But for now, you may use the macOS stacks for that. And I think that's all. So we can use Bitrise not only for continuous integration, but also for cleaning devices. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Karol. Awesome. Let's see if we have any questions. Let's just wait a second. But if we are good, then thank you again for the presentation. And then we will be moving on to our next segment. All right. So our next section is actually our open roundtable. which is going to be a little bit different than what we usually do. I'll be joined by Damien Murphy, my colleague, works as sales engineer at Bitrise. And the reason why this is going to be a bit different is because we'll be opening up the discussion to you. Basically, we'll be talking a little bit about the topic of the first deep dive webinar that we had, which was spinning up builds by fanning out tests on Bitrise. And just, hi, Damien. Hi.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey. So quick just introduction of how we're going to do this. You can let me know if you want to participate, if you want to join us and talk a little bit. Two ways. You can either let me know in chat. I'll pull you into the room. And you can also set a status to yourself, which is at the bottom right of the screen. You can just raise your hand and I'll give you the right to join audio and video if you want to. You don't have to join video if you don't feel like it. Don't worry. So just to start off, Damien, can you run us through the topic in a few sentences, just sum up what the deep dive was all about?
Yeah, sure. So the deep dive covered a lot of different aspects of testing on simulators. So it focused a lot on stability and performance, and how you can basically optimize both stability and performance at the same time using parallel fan-out builds.
All right. I actually have a couple of questions to just start things out, but if anyone wants to join, don't be afraid, don't be shy. We're here to talk. So you talked about iOS simulator test and the simulator crashes, and you showed a lot of numbers during the webinar on how they perform and how stable they were. So how did you actually run that many tests to gather all these results?
Yeah, so I basically used the Bitrise API to kick off and pull back all the information. So if you haven't used the Bitrise API before, it's pretty extensive. So that enabled me to, start builds on demand using code and then pull back the build logs. So in order to tell whether it was a simulator crash or just, a flaky test, I had to parse the build log and then identify that kind of telltale simulator crash in the log. So I built like a little local website that basically pulled back all that data. Took a couple of minutes to load. I had over, I think, 3,800 tests I ran. So yeah, took a while to load, but once it loaded, it had all the statistics I needed then to make the findings.
Yeah. Actually, my second question would have been like, how did you actually tell if a build failed due to a simulator crash?
Yeah. So there's basically a log output that comes. Typically says testing failed, and if it fails for a different reason, you won't get that same message. So I basically just parsed the entire log line by line to find that telltale signature. And I was able to spot check as well. So, with the tool I built, I was able to just go back in and look at the builds to confirm that's exactly what happened. So I got 100% hit rate on that. So I was pretty happy with it.
Oh, that's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about like after actually fanning out the builds, how you collected the build artifacts?
Yeah. So it was actually my first step that I'd built for Bitrise. So I was kind of learning as I went along. Now I'm pretty familiar with Node.js. A lot of the Bitrise steps are written in Go. So I was kind of interested to see if I could do it in Node.js, just because that's what I'm familiar with. So I talked to the team and they gave me some pointers, and I was able to get a Node.js step up and running. Node.js is great for interacting with APIs. It's JavaScript, so all the responses are JSON. So manipulating and accessing the data was super straightforward. So basically pull back the build slugs from the step that started all the fan out builds, and then queried those builds using the Bitrise API, and then downloaded the artifacts into the file system and made those available as outputs.
All right. I think we have Javier typing in the chat, so I'll just wait a second to see whether he wants to join us. But you're also talking a little bit about like automatically generating test plans. And you said that if you have an Xcode project that uses test targets, you need a way to like split the tests, to split them between the fan out builds, right? So how did you actually shard the test cases into test plans automatically?
Yeah, that was actually something that initially I didn't think it was going to be easy. But I found a pretty cool Node.js project called Xcode. And Xcode is basically a parser for your Xcode project. So using that, I was able to basically pull out each of the individual parts of the Xcode project into, like a nice entity. So once I did that, that meant I was able to find the list of all tests in a given Xcode target. And then from there, generating the test plans was quite easy. I just like chopped them into equal sized pieces. Now the challenge was like, just creating test plans is one thing, but you also have to update the Xcode project so that it knows, that these test plans exists and, what scheme they're in. And so there's a couple of little tricks I had to do to basically update the scheme and the Xcode project once I created the test plans. But it was pretty straightforward once I figured out exactly how to parse it. So yeah, the code is up on GitHub. So if anybody wants to have a look at it, it's open source.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm just looking to see whether anyone raised their hands, but looks like we got some shy people here. Anyone's welcome to join, really. Don't worry about like not joining video or anything. No.
I posted a link there to the test plan charter if anybody wants to have a look at the source code. Most of the code is just in the index.js, so you can see how it works. It's pretty short bit of code. It's only like 130 lines, so that should be pretty manageable.
All right. So there was, if I remember correctly, there was a question there that was asked about a retry mechanism for failed tests. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that that's possible through the Bitrise API. So I was just wondering, like, you can talk a little bit about anything else, anything cool that you did with the Bitrise API, some other cool examples.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm looking at now is a way to basically, parse previous builds and aggregate the times, right? So like at the moment, the test plan charter just chops them into equal chunks. But those equal chunks might actually take longer or shorter to run depending on the types of tests. So the idea, in the future would be to parse the Bitrise log for all the tests that ran, and then try to combine tests so that we get, equal length chunks rather than equal count chunks, equal length chunks, because that will optimize. Like when you run in parallel, you're always going to take as long as your longest parallel task, because you have to wait for them all to finish. So if you can optimize the length that they take, then you can optimize for speed as well. So that's something I'm working on now. And then to your other point about like, how can we use the Bitrise API to retry only tests that failed? So what we would have to do is we'd have to parse the build log post completion and try to find which tests failed. So, once you can identify which tests failed, you can kick off a build to only run those tests. So yeah, I'm looking at ways to do that within the same build. But yeah, right now it's probably a secondary build that would have to be kicked off.
All right. Any other cool stuff that you might want to share?
Yeah, just playing around with the Bitrise API, like it's super powerful. The whole platform is built on it, so you're getting the benefits of how Bitrise is built, in the palm of your hands. One of the things I built just for playing around was a Grafana dashboard. So basically taking the Bitrise API and then turning it into a time series API. So the Bitrise API will return you data between 2 time stamps. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to convert that into time series data. So there's another project I open sourced. I can share it in the link. And yeah, basically you can spin up a time series Grafana endpoint, and that will enable you to make a dashboard out of it. So there's a couple of customers using it already. Like it's an unofficial thing that I was just playing around with. I mainly used it for monitoring my my simulator tests, right? Like I wanted to see, how long they were taking over time as I changed things, and this just really enabled me to visualize that.
All right, that's pretty cool. We actually got a question in the meantime. Well, 2 questions. I was just wondering, one of them is from our colleague, Buzzy. Buzzy, do you want to join us? Can I invite you in? Or would you prefer if I read the question? It's fine either way. I won't force you. Sure. All right, let's get him in here. You now have the ability to turn on your stuff. So, hi, Buzzy. Are you with us? Also, Raphael, in the meantime, you can join us as well if you want to, but if not, that's totally fine. I'll read out your question. No worries. So, hi, Buzzy.
Hey, guys.
Those are some cool posters in the background.
Yeah, thanks.
I wonder where they're from. All right. So, what were you saying?
Yeah, so the question I asked is about the next steps for building and testing, basically the next steps for improving builds with fan-out. So do you have anything in mind that basically would be the next step that could further increase the performance, or is there any other path that you think that we could also go through and you would
kind of froze there. You're back. All right.
Yeah, so one of the things we're looking at is the different VM configurations and how they impact simulators, primarily on iOS. So one of the findings I had was that each simulator requires a physical core, and I don't know if that's due to some sort of underlying Apple implementation. But from what I found is stability starts to drop as soon as you have less than 1 core per parallel simulator. So if we wanted to create like a simulator farm, I want to understand exactly what's the optimal. Is it better to run 3 at a time on 3 cores, and chop up a machine, or can you run 6 at a time on a single like beefy machine with 6 cores? So it's just a case of doing more benchmarks and running hundreds of builds to try to see if they crash. And then I know, Tomas, you're going to be doing some fan out for Android as well, right?
Yep. That will be fun.
Yeah. So I do a lot of the iOS stuff at Bitrise, and Tomas is the Android guru among many other things. So yeah. Cool.
All right, cool. So all right. So Raphael was asking, how about cache between iOS tests and usage of multiple simulator devices?
Yeah. So in the blog post that I wrote up, I covered a lot of these topics. So what we did was we built once, and then we ran the tests, in parallel on multiple different VMs. So that means you're only building it once, but you're testing it at the same time multiple times. So from that point of view, you're essentially caching it, right? And then multiple simulator devices. So we're using parallel simulators on each of the VMs. So I think with the test I was running, I was using 3 parallel simulators based on the VM size. But one of the things that you could do is you could actually speed things up even more, based on what I was saying earlier about identifying which tests are going to take the same amount of time, so that when your parallel tests are finishing, you're not waiting for like the longest shard to complete.
All right.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Raphael. So I don't actually. Might have another one. But yeah, thank you, and thank you, Baji, you as well, for the questions. Raphael asked, did you recommend multiple simulators only for UI tests?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing that I found out. Like if you're running unit tests, you can actually disable host APIs, and you don't even need a simulator. The simulator really is only needed for UI tests. So if you're running unit tests, you can actually disable that setting inside your Xcode target, and that will mean that you're not going to spin up any of the simulator's host APIs.
All right, cool. Well, actually, we will have another roundtable like this during the next bug as well. So I believe our guest will be Baji at that one, if I'm not mistaken. So don't worry if you come up with any questions in the meantime. We'll be able to return to it next time as well. Yeah, thank you for the question again. Can you share the post? I most certainly can. I will link it to you in just a second. But other than that, I think this was about the time that we had for the roundtable, which we wanted to keep it short, keep it simple. And, next time, if any of you feel like coming up to the stage, you're welcome to do so. And yeah, thank you, Damien, for joining, and thanks, Baji, again.
Thank you.
A lot of people
Thanks,
are typing. Oh, thanks. Yeah. With this, actually, we will be ending the meetup. So a couple of things before we go. I wanted to thank everyone. Feel free to post all the links from the talks that we had today. So I wanted to thank everyone who joined us today, both speakers and attendees. It was great to have you. I will be posting a couple of links here in the chat. Our first one is the registration form for the next bug. So if you enjoyed this, be sure to join us at the next one as well. We also have a dedicated Slack channel. We kind of messed this up the last time, but now we have a working link. So on our public Slack, we have a Bitrise User Group Slack channel. The link will actually prompt you to register with your email to the public Slack, and then you get an email, and then you join the channel automatically. So make sure to join and just continue any conversations that you would want to have over there. We would also love to hear what you thought of this episode as well. So let us know what your feelings were. There's a feedback form that I just posted. We're also always looking for new speakers. So if you would want to present about a topic at the next one or the one after that, or anytime really, just let us know and we'll get back to you shortly. If you have any questions about Bitrise, non-Bitrise, the meetup, or anything, you can find me on Twitter. So just send me a message and let's talk. And actually, we were wondering if some of you could fill a research survey out, because we're doing some research on how COVID is affecting mobile development and developers in general. So if you want to share your experiences of how things changed in this past time, then just let us know, because it's really important for us to know what's going on out there and how you're feeling. And that is basically it. As always, make sure to follow our social channels. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter to receive notifications about upcoming sessions and stuff. And without further ado, hope everyone has a lovely day, and see you next time. Thank you. Thank you so much.